Menzies-Urich walked into the recovery room after the surgery, and the moment Heather saw his face, she knew something had changed. He wasn't just the charming action hero anymore. He was tired, worn down by a fight he hadn't chosen. Menzies-Urich was known as the action hero with a heart. Heather Menzies, on the other hand, had made her mark as the girl from The Sound of Music, who once saved a child from drowning during filming. Their love story was one of Hollywood's most heartfelt yet underrated, and few people knew how it ended or the pain they endured. The tragedy didn't just stop with Robert's illness. What followed were a series of events that seemed too cruel to be coincidences, including a death that occurred exactly 15 years later, down to the very minute. Menzies-Urich held a record in Hollywood. He starred in more TV shows than any other leading man at the time, 14 different series. His career wasn't just about being prolific, it was about constantly surprising people. He started out as a football player from Ohio with no Hollywood background, just raw talent and a good friend, Burt Reynolds. Burt helped him get his first big break, landing Robert a role in the show SWAT in 1975, where he played Officer Jim Street. Though the show was cancelled after one season for being too violent, it made Robert a familiar face in households across the country. He went on to star in Vegas from 1978 to 1981, where he played Private Detective Dan Tanner, cruising through Las Vegas in a bright red 1957 Ford Thunderbird. The role earned him 2 Golden Globe nominations and turned him into a primetime icon. But Robert wasn't satisfied with being just one type of actor. Over the next 30 years, he explored comedy, westerns, thrillers, and even hosted respected documentary series like National Geographic Explorer. His work on Spenser, For Hire in the mid-80s wasn't just another show, it contributed nearly $50 million to the Massachusetts economy and became known for its raw, authentic storytelling. The series showcased Robert's chemistry with co-star Avery Brooks and proved that action shows could also have depth and emotion. When no one expected it, Robert made another bold move. Despite undergoing chemotherapy for synovial cell sarcoma, a rare and aggressive cancer, he made his Broadway debut in 2000, starring as Billy Flynn in Chicago. Audiences were amazed. Not only could Robert act and fight cancer at the same time, but he could also sing, really sing. Even in pain, he brought joy and light to the stage. Heather Menzies was born in Toronto on December 3, 1949, to Scottish parents who had escaped the aftermath of World War II. Life in Canada was hard, and her family moved around constantly as her father struggled to make it as an artist. By the time she was 14, Heather had lived in 4 cities and 2 countries. The constant changes made her tough and adaptable. That resilience helped her land the role of Louisa Von Trapp in The Sound of Music when she was just a teenager, despite having little acting experience. She beat out hundreds of girls for the part because she came across as genuine. During the filming of The Sound of Music, Heather showed she was more than just an actress. In the famous rowboat scene, when the boat tipped over, 5-year-old co-star Kim Carath, who played Gretel, started to drown. Heather didn't hesitate. While others froze, she jumped in and pulled Kim to safety. That moment, captured on film, was real. The Sound of Music became one of the biggest box office hits of all time, making Heather an international star at just 15. But she didn't want to be remembered only as a sweet teenager. In 1973, she shocked fans by posing nude for Playboy in a spread titled Tender Trap, a move meant to break away from her child star image. That same year, she starred in a strange horror film involving a mad scientist and snakes, followed by a role in the TV series Logan's Run. Heather was determined to show she could handle mature roles. Her most successful film role came in 1978 with Piranha, a low-budget horror film that became a cult classic. Despite a shoestring budget, the movie earned $16 million and even drew praise from Steven Spielberg. Heather played Maggie McCown, a fearless woman who helped drive the action and stood out in a cast full of genre veterans. Robert and Heather met in 1974 while shooting a canned meat commercial. They were playing a married couple, and the chemistry felt real. At the time, Heather was recovering from a young marriage that had ended in divorce. Robert had also been married briefly to his college sweetheart. Despite their past heartbreaks, something clicked. Just over a year later, they were married on November 21, 1975. It may have seemed fast, but it felt right. They quickly became one of the rare true love stories in Hollywood. Their bond wasn't just about physical attraction. It was about shared values and mutual support. Robert brought Heather into his professional world, giving her parts in his shows and supporting her decisions, including stepping back from acting to focus on their family. When Heather found out she was pregnant in 1975, they were overjoyed. Over the next decades, while Robert's star continued to rise, Heather remained his biggest supporter. They adopted 3 children and focused on building a peaceful, grounded life despite the chaos of show business. But in 1996, everything changed. Robert was diagnosed with synovial sarcoma, a rare form of cancer that mostly affects soft tissues. The diagnosis was devastating. But instead of hiding, Robert went public. He became a symbol of strength and resilience. He worked through treatments, took on new roles, and continued to inspire others with his determination. Heather stood by him every step of the way. She organized fundraisers, helped start the Urich Fund for cancer research, and refused to let his illness define their lives. Robert fought for 5 years. He tried every treatment available, even experimental ones. He kept acting, singing, and spending time with his family. But on April 16, 2002, at the age of 55, Robert Urich passed away in Thousand Oaks, California. The loss was immense. Heather was devastated, and the world mourned with her. But she didn't disappear. In honor of her husband, she became a cancer activist. She continued to work with research foundations, raised money, and kept Robert's legacy alive. She made it her mission to fight the disease that took him away too soon. Then, something chilling happened. Exactly 15 years to the day and hour of Robert's death, Heather passed away. On April 16, 2017, she died of brain cancer. The timing was so precise that even those close to her struggled to make sense of it. Some called it coincidence. Others felt it was destiny. In the end, they left this world as they had lived in it, together, bound by love. Their story is more than just a love story. It's about resilience, courage, and devotion. It's about choosing each other over fame, sticking together through sickness and health, and facing the hardest battles hand in hand. Hollywood may have forgotten their names, but for those who knew their story, Robert Urich and Heather Menzies remain a powerful reminder of what real love looks like in a world that often forgets it. Their legacy lives on not in the number of shows or box office hits but in the quiet, powerful example they set for others. They showed the world that it's possible to succeed in Hollywood without losing your soul, and that even in the darkest times, love can be the brightest light. Robert and Heather were filled with happiness when they found out they were going to have a baby. Heather later said they were over the moon. But that happiness didn't last long. Heather lost the baby. It broke their hearts, and sadly, it didn't end there. She had another miscarriage, and then a third. 3 pregnancies, 3 losses. Each one left them feeling more shattered than the last. What started out as joyful hope quickly became a long, painful period of sorrow. Their friends began to worry. The emotional weight was so heavy that people feared the couple might not be able to keep going. And while all of this was happening, both Heather and Robert were in the middle of very successful Hollywood careers. On the surface, they seemed to be thriving in the spotlight. But behind the scenes, their lives were falling apart. After the third miscarriage, they realized something had to change. It was then that they made the hard choice to adopt. Adoption wasn't an easy process. They had to wait, fill out a lot of paperwork, and prove they were ready. But in the end, it was worth it. In 1978, they welcomed their first child, Ryan. Then in 1980, Emily joined the family. And much later, in 1998, they adopted Allison. That long gap between the kids was on purpose. Heather and Robert wanted to give each child the attention and love they needed. Ryan eventually became a doctor, choosing to work in the field of infectious diseases. He once said he chose medicine because he couldn't help his father medically, but maybe he could help someone else. Emily became a nurse and now works in an emergency room in Ontario. Their children were inspired by their father's health struggles and chose careers that focused on healing and helping others. Heather had been a rising star in Hollywood. She was well known for her roles as Louisa in The Sound of Music and Jessica 6 in Logan's Run. She had a busy and promising career ahead of her. But after adopting children, she made a big decision. She stepped away from acting. In the late 1970s and early 1980s, this was unusual. Women in Hollywood didn't typically walk away from fame and opportunity. But Heather chose her family. After 1979, she took only a few small roles in TV shows and movies. She wanted to give her children a stable and loving home, even if it meant giving up the spotlight. Robert was also not your typical Hollywood father. Many stars let nannies raise their kids while they stayed focused on their work. But Robert didn't do that. Even though he was constantly working, appearing in over 15 television series during a 30-year career, he made time for his family. When Emily had medical appointments, Robert had a special clause in his contract that allowed him to fly across the country to be with her. That kind of parenting was very rare, especially in the 1980s. But Robert wanted to be present. When Ryan misbehaved, Robert didn't yell. Instead, he would sit on the floor with him, look him in the eyes, and ask what was wrong. He didn't want to punish his children. He wanted to understand them. Even in his final days, when he was weak from cancer, Robert still made an effort to play on the floor with little Allison. That was just 2 days before he died. Everything changed in August 1996. Robert went to the doctor for a routine checkup, and that's when they found it, synovial sarcoma. It's a rare and aggressive cancer that affects soft tissue near joints, mostly in young people under 30. Robert was 49. The cancer was in his groin, and the treatment would be extremely tough: chemotherapy, radiation, and multiple surgeries. The timing couldn't have been worse. Robert had just started a new television series called The Lazarus Man. He was in great shape, feeling strong, and full of energy. When the diagnosis came, it shocked not just him, but the entire entertainment world. His show was doing well and had been approved for a second season. But soon after the news of his illness came out, Castle Rock Entertainment suddenly cancelled the show. No one expected it. Only 20 of the 22 episodes had aired. 2 finished episodes were left unseen. TNT had already agreed to renew the show, which made the cancellation even more confusing and heartbreaking. In July 1996, Robert began treatment. Every morning at 5:45 a.m., he arrived at the hospital. Doctors filled his chest with potassium, bicarbonate, and anti-nausea drugs before starting chemotherapy. The chemo lasted 4 hours a day for 9 days at a time. After just 6 days, Robert said it felt like chemicals were burning through his veins. The pain was intense and constant. He tried to keep himself distracted, but there was no escaping how terrible it felt. Radiation was even worse. They used special lead templates to aim extremely powerful radiation at the cancer. It was thousands of times stronger than a normal X-ray. The goal was to kill the cancer without destroying his body. By February 1997, Robert had lost all his hair and could hardly breathe. The sickness never left. He wasn't just fighting cancer, he was fighting the harsh treatment that was supposed to save him. Then, something completely unexpected happened. In October 1997, surgeons went in to remove what was left of the tumor. But when they opened him up, they found nothing. No tumor. No cancer. Not even any dead tissue. It was as if the cancer had simply disappeared. Robert was in disbelief. He even started to wonder if he had ever really had cancer at all. Doctors told him that the chances of a relapse were only 5%. For the first time in years, real hope returned. By 1998, Robert was officially declared cancer-free. He became the national spokesperson for the American Cancer Society. He told everyone, "It's part of my deal I made with God to spread the word that it is survivable." He returned to work. He joined the cast of Love Boat, The Next Wave. 2 years later, he made his Broadway debut as Billy Flynn in Chicago, fulfilling a lifelong dream. It finally felt like they had beaten cancer for good. Robert and Heather were filled with gratitude. They began to make plans for their future again. He even appeared on Who Wants to Be a Millionaire and donated all $125,000 of his winnings to cancer research. Together, he and Heather started the Urich Fund, which supported sarcoma research at the University of Michigan. He traveled across the country encouraging people to get screened early. He began writing his memoir, An Extraordinary Life. For once, their lives felt hopeful and stable. But that hope wouldn't last. In November 2001, the cancer came back. New lumps began to appear. At first, doctors thought a new drug might work. But they were wrong. This time, the cancer was even more aggressive and had spread throughout his body. Surgery was no longer an option. There was no cure. No more chances. Robert was still working on his final show, an NBC sitcom called Emerald, when the disease came back full force. His career ended just as the illness began to take over. Robert and Heather had thought they had made it through the worst. But now, everything was unraveling again. And this time, they knew how it would end. On April 16, 2002, at 7:22 p.m., Robert Urich took his final breath at Los Robles Regional Medical Center in California. He was 55 years old. Heather and their 3 children were at his side: Ryan, who was 24, Emily, 22, and Allison, only 4. Just a few days earlier, Robert had been hospitalized for breathing problems. Even in his last weeks, he kept working on his memoir. He wanted to leave something behind for his family and his fans. The night before he died, his final TV movie, Night of the Wolf, aired across the country. Heather was 52 when she lost her husband. They had been married for 27 years. She had stood by him through every surgery, every chemo session, and every terrifying moment. They had lost children to miscarriage. They had built a beautiful family through adoption. And now, she had to face the world alone. Her grief was overwhelming. But she didn't let it stop her. 3 days after his death, nearly 1,000 people came to St. Charles Borromeo Church in North Hollywood to honor Robert. Friends and stars like Tony Danza, Gavin MacLeod, and Tom Selleck came to pay their respects. Tom Selleck said, "It's sad because of who Bob is and was. It's true friendship that brings these kinds of people out." Outside the church, a black and white photo of Robert stood surrounded by flowers. The man who had starred in 15 television series was gone, but no one was going to forget him. Heather didn't slow down. Even before Robert passed away, they had started a fund together. But after his death, she turned it into something more powerful. She founded the Robert Urich Foundation, taking a hands-on role in raising awareness and funding for cancer research. She said that leading the foundation gave her energy, just like every precious day she had spent with Robert. She continued to raise their children and kept working. She turned her pain into a mission. Then, in November 2017, tragedy struck again. Heather Menzies-Urich, the actress who once played Louisa Von Trapp in The Sound of Music, was diagnosed with glioblastoma multiforme, one of the most aggressive and deadly brain cancers known to medicine. She was 68 years old. The cruelest part was the timing. It happened exactly 15 years after cancer had taken Robert. For 15 years, Heather had dedicated herself to fighting cancer. Through the foundation, she raised money and helped other families avoid the pain she and her children had gone through. But now, it was her turn. The same disease she had battled for others had come for her. The diagnosis came just 4 weeks before she died. There was no time to prepare. No long goodbyes. Robert had battled cancer for 6 years, which gave them time to hope and to try. But Heather's decline was sudden and brutal. Glioblastoma doesn't wait. It spreads fast, and it takes its victims even faster. Her son Ryan said that her health collapsed almost right after the diagnosis. There was no chance to try a new drug or join a clinical trial. There wasn't time to organize the kind of care and support she had given to so many others. Her family watched helplessly as she slipped away. She wasn't just an actress. She had been a ballerina, a mother, and someone who put her entire soul into life. But within days, her voice became softer, her energy disappeared, and she faded. On Christmas Eve, December 24, 2017, at exactly 7:22 p.m., Heather died at home in Frankfort, Ontario. She was surrounded by her 3 children. Ryan later said she was not in pain. After 4 weeks of facing the inevitable, she had simply reached her limit. The setting was peaceful, even symbolic. Christmas Eve is a time for family, warmth, and hope. But for them, it became the moment they lost her. Strangely, Heather passed away at the same time, 7:22 p.m., as Robert had, 15 years and 8 months earlier. The symmetry was haunting. And there had been other losses, too. Just over a year before Heather's death, Charmian Carr, who played Liesl in The Sound of Music, had also passed away. Now another Von Trapp sister was gone. Fans of the film mourned deeply. The little girl who had once sung so long, farewell had taken her final bow. Ryan's public statement about his mother was honest and deeply moving. He didn't just share that she had died. He explained exactly what happened, including the time. He said she wasn't in pain and that she made the decision to let go. She took her last breath with dignity. He reminded the world that she wasn't just Louisa Von Trapp. She had been a dancer, a fighter, and a woman who chose to spend her life helping others. Even in her final days, she never lost that inner grace.